Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be deep diving another Imperial Guard 10th edition Codex datasheet. And this time, we will be casting our ever critical eye over what very well may be the best heavy weapon squad choice in the Codex. Cadians, Kriegers, eat your heart out. This is the Catachan Heavy Weapon Squad. And so, without further ado, let's take aim, bring it down, and dive right into this thing. As is tradition, let us start off with a cheeky gander at the stat line. We've got a movement value of 6 inches, which is not great, not terrible. It's pretty standard issue. We've then got toughness of 3, 5+ save, and 2 wounds. This is basically 2 guardsmen stuck together on one base. And as a result, it is just as fragile as 2 guardsmen. Do not expect your Catachan heavy weapon squads to be able to take much in the way of incoming fire, especially if they are stuck out in the open. But it is worth mentioning that a lot of the Catachan heavy weapon squad's durability comes from indirect sources rather than direct sources. So what I mean by that is, firstly, you have indirect fire options as a weapon, so you can hide out of line of sight, and if you can't be seen, it doesn't really matter what your defensive profile is because you can't be hurt. The other thing is that a lot of the heavy weapons that you can get with this unit are quite long range. We're talking like lascans and stuff, which are going to have like a 48-inch range. Distance can protect you, especially against some armies. For example, Leagues of Votan jump to mind, who have got a lot of shooting, but they tend to be quite short-ranged. The last couple of things that make you durable outside of the stat line is, firstly, well, it's not really durability, but disposability. Catachan heavy weapon squads are phenomenally cheap. At the time of recording, they're only 50 points per squad of 3 teams. So that's 3 las cannons or 3 whatever other weapon you want to go for 50 points. So whilst that doesn't make them more durable, it does make them more disposable. And if they die, then it's not a huge loss from your roster. The other thing to mention is that typically heavy weapon squads are low priority when they shouldn't be, because 3 las cannons is 3 las cannons. But a lot of the time people will get tunnel visioned, they'll get bamboozled, they'll get drawn to things like the Leman Russes and the Rogel Dawns, which are the more obvious big scary targets. And I've actually been on the receiving end of this, and I've been the one dishing this tactic out, where you have your big scary things absorbing the firepower, but the heavy weapon teams are just stuck entrenched. They're just covering a fire line, and they're just slinging out shots every turn, and they're actually the ones that are doing most of the damage, but your opponent just can't draw their eyes away from those big scary tanks. They feel like they should be the more higher priority. So this defensive profile is very, very bad. Let's not beat around the bush, but there are loads of ways that actually mean that Catachan heavy weapon squads end up surviving longer than they should do. And as we said, even if they don't, it's not really a big problem for you. I appreciate we really deep dive the defensive part of the stat line. So let's go over to the leadership next. Leadership 7 is fine. It's standard issue, it's in the guard, but there is one thing worth mentioning with heavy weapon squads, which is that the leadership rarely matters even if you fail it. Think about it. There are 3 models in the unit. If you lose one of them, you're not below half strength, so no need to take a battle shot test. And 2 las cannons are still a good target for stratagems and a good target for orders. So brilliant. If you lose 2 of them, yes, you'll have to take a battle shot test, but at that point, the squad really isn't doing much for you. It's one lone heavy weapon running around. Maybe you get an order on it, maybe you don't. Maybe it can have a stratagem on it, probably not worth targeting it. So there will be those niche cases where you're like, oh, I really need to be able to move this thing to get onto objective. There will be those niche circumstances where you're like, I really needed to be able to take aim that thing. But most of the time, you'll probably find that when it gets to the point of battleshot being relevant, this unit isn't a high priority for your stratagems and for your orders. Last and probably least, in this case, we do have the objective control, which is 2. For a full team, for a full squad sitting on objective, that will be a total of 6 OC. That's fine, but it's probably not going to come up outside of desperate circumstances where you're trying to get every bit of OC onto objective. Don't worry about this too much. With the stat line covered, now let's move on to the weapons and war gear. First up, we have got the unit composition. Each squad consists of 3 heavy weapon teams, and each team comes equipped with a heavy bolter, a lasgun, and some close combat weapons. It is important to note that when you shoot this unit, you get to fire the heavy weapon. In this case, it starts with a heavy bolter and the lasgun. It's not a las pistol, it's a lasgun. It's not a lot. At 2400 range, it's an extra 3 shots, but at close range, it is an extra 6 shots. And if you're in a combined arms attachment, they might be lethal hits as well. I have had it happen on occasion where I've brought an enemy unit down to the last wound, and I have fired the lasgun from the heavy weapon teams, and I have been able to blink off the last wound. It's a very rare occurrence, but it's happened enough times that I have enough fond memories of it happening. Let's be real here. You're not taking the heavy weapon team for the lasgun. You're taking it for the big heavy weapon. So you start up with the heavy bolter. You can swap each team's gun out for another weapon. An autocannon, a lascannon, a missile launcher, or a mortar. It is worth noting that you can mix and match as much as you want. So you could have 1 heavy bolter, 1 autocannon, 1 lascannon. You could have 2 autocannons and a missile launcher. You could have 2 lascannons and an autocannon. I strongly advise you to have all of the weapons be the same in each squad. I tend to find that newer players go, well, if I put 1 of each in, it'll be able to handle anything it comes across. The reality is that if you go for 1 of each, you're just diluting the specialization, diluting the capabilities of the unit. And a squad that is trying to handle everything can rarely handle anything. Because, oh, you're facing a horde. Well, you've got like 1 autocannon and 1 lascannon and 1 heavy bolter. There's just not enough firepower there. Oh, you're trying to handle vehicles. Oh, good luck. That 1 lascannon, you know. It's much better to go, this is a dedicated heavy weapon squad that's going to go after vehicles. Let's go lascannons. Or this is a dedicated squad that's going to be doing indirect fire support. All mortars. The only time when mixing and matching is really relevant is when you're trying to maybe scrape together some heavy weapon teams and you've got, let's say, 2 lascannons. You don't have a 3rd lascannon model, but you do have an autocannon one, so you can sort of make up the numbers with that. So it's good for sort of collection wise, hobby wise, trying to get the teams together wise. But if you have the option of going full send on 1 option, you should do that. Now, speaking of all of these weapons, Imperial Guard veterans will be familiar with what they do, but let's briefly run through them for those newer players who might not understand what each weapon specialization is. First into the breach, we have got the autocannon. It's a heavy weapon. Side note, all of these are heavy weapon apart from the lasgun, which means that when it stays still, it gets +1 to hit. It's got a good range. It's got a good 48-inch range. It fires 2 shots at ballistic skill 5+, but remember, if you stay still, that'll go up to a 4+. And if you give this the take aim order, and yes, take aim and heavy do stack. I've been talking about this for 18 months. I swear to God, if anyone puts it in the comment section, other than to troll me, I don't mind being trolled. But heavy and take aim do stack. Heavy improves the to hit roll, the physical dice you're rolling. Take aim improves your ballistic skill stat. Point is that if you combine heavy and take aim, you'll get up to hitting on a 3+, which is good. Your strength 9, AP -1, damage 3. The autocannon is often described as the jack of all trades, master of none. This is because traditionally it's seen as been having a decent volume of fire, with a full squad of 3 getting 6 shots in total, 2 per gun, whilst also having a decent damage to be able to tear chunks out of vehicles and monsters. I like the autocannon. I think from a rule of cool perspective, it's phenomenal. Just the idea of the big pom-pom cannons being like bam, 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 bam. Love that. It's a good second pick, but it's not my first pick. I'll start putting autocannon heavy weapon teams in my army if I've run out of lascannon weapon teams in my collection. My first pick, one of them, is the lascannon. This is because we are in a meta of elite, hyper elite infantry and vehicles and monsters. These are the kind of units where you need big AP to get the job done. And even though the Lance Cannon only has one shot, we are not as interested in the volume because, like I said, a lot of these are single targets or are very small squads of infantry. So one shot is often enough. 3 shots from a squad is really good. Strength 12 means that we're wounding most vehicles on 3s, and it means we're wounding most elite infantry on 2s. And the AP -3 means that we're cutting through cover and probably kicking someone down to a 4+ vulnerable save, which is great. D6 with 1 damage means that on average, we are going to be tearing big chunks out of enemy vehicles and also one-shot slotting those big infantry like custodies. My other go-to pick for the heavy weapon squad is the mortar. Now you might be surprised at this. I mean, it's got a very swingy number of shots. It's only strength 5, there's no AP, and it's only 1 damage. It kind of looks completely contrary to the lance cannon. The thing is, the mortar has indirect fire. So what that means is you don't need to be able to see your opponent's unit with your heavy weapon team to be able to shoot them. So what's really good about mortars is you can take like 2 or 3 squads. That's like 6 to 9 mortars in total across your army, and you can just put them on your home objective. And you can just order them to take aim. So they'll be staying still plus take aim. Yes, -1 for indirect fire, but that's still hitting on 4s. And you can just spaff out loads and loads of shots. And just max mortars is a great way of just chipping away wounds off very badly damaged enemy units, or just essentially stat checking those tougher units that often like to sit on home objectives. Things like enemy 5-man squads of intercessors or their equivalent. Tell you what, I love it when I play against a Sister of Battle player and they stick like 5 1-wound sisters on their home objective. I'll just keep mortaring and mortaring and mortaring. That's great for me. Yeah, they got a 3-up save. I don't care. They're going to fail enough of them if I keep mortar blasting them. So I really do like mortars. The only downside to mortars is if you do come across an army which is just so phenomenally tough. like knights, they're okay. Maybe they'll get through the 3-up save. Maybe they'll chip the last move enough. Maybe. But I tend to find that they do lose a lot when trying to just fish for 6s. But they are pretty decent at going after those more fragile units that are also relying on your opponent's side. They're also relying on not being seen for their durability. Now that is all of the good options, but we do have a couple of bad ones. Ones that I would actively avoid. First up, we've got the heavy bolter. I'm sorry, I love heavy bolters. I've got loads of them. In previous editions, these were absolutely my go-to. I have loads from 8th and 9th edition. But in 10th edition, this just is not the weapon. It's the anti-infantry choice. It gets sustained hits plus 3 shots, which means that, again, across a squad of 3 of them, that's potential for loads of sustained hits and loads of volume of fire. It's just not got the strength and the damage. In the meta we're in, of vehicles, monsters, elite infantry, it's just not the best choice. We've also got the missile launcher. Now, unlike the heavy bolter, which has been good at times, and I do believe will rise again, missile launcher, for every edition that I can think of, has been by far the worst choice. Absolutely terrible. Literally awful. The problem with the missile launcher is that it tries to be able to do 2 jobs. It tries to be able to do anti-infantry and anti-tank at the same time, and as a result is just terrible at both. Because you couldn't have it where it was better at anti-infantry than the heavy bolter, but then better at anti-tank at the lascan, because otherwise it would just be so obviously the go-to choice. I know sometimes GW weapon designers feel that way, but the problem is that they've gone the other way with it, so they've made it a terrible anti-infantry. It's like, oh look, you can fire D6 blast bolter shots. Okay, that's bolters have never been great. Do you know what I mean? Or you could fire a crappy las cannon shot, which doesn't have the strength or the AP or the D6 plus 1 damage. Just got the D6. Missile launchers are terrible. They've always been terrible. They're very cool from a rule of cool perspective, being able to like say RPG and live those Black Hawk Down moments, but They are awful. They've always been terrible. Never take them. I appreciate that I've thrown a lot of information at you guys there. And if you're a newer player, it might be difficult to digest it all. So let me summarize it in a few seconds. You should always take the same weapons inside a heavy weapon squad. Don't mix and match. I recommend you go for 3 las cannons if you need more punchy anti-tank, or you go for 3 mortars if you need something that's going to be sitting on your home objective and just doing some light artillery support. If you need more direct firepower but have run out of las cannons, the autocannon is a good secondary choice. I would actively avoid missile launchers and heavy bolters. But I know what some of you guys are thinking. Mordian, this is all very standard information, but you said these were the best heavy weapon squads. Where's the juice? You've been squeezing. Where's the juice? Okay, let's get into why I think these guys are the best heavy weapon squad option in the Codex. It really comes down to 2 factors. The first one is their abilities. Firstly, we have this little cheeky chappy right here, just this little 1-line core scouts 6 inches. Right, that's it. I am full mast. We've gone from 6 to midnight. Because you guys know I really love Scout's ability. Anytime I see Scouts, I just go, yep, that's the best. That's the best option. Okay, being a little bit more serious, why is Scout so important generally, and why is it so important in this context with this data sheet? So Scouts gives you a free move, and the move distance is the number of inches here, so in this case 6 inches. It gives you a free move before the game starts, but after you know who's going first. So you roll off to see who's going to go first, and then you can do, both sides can do their scout moves. Now, the reason this is so good with heavy weapon squads is because if you've got them equipped with direct fire weapons like las cannons and auto cannons, then you can start them out in the open, in a firing lane with line of sight to the enemy. Especially if you're playing on something like GW terrain, typically you are going to be able to see enemy units. You can't hide everything. GW terrain tends to be a little bit lighter than things like those other competitive formats like UKTC and WTC. So you start out in the open, which is important because if you get first turn, it means that you can stay still, benefit from heavy, go take aim, hit on 3s, brilliant, boom, just start shooting. But if you don't get first turn, well, you don't want your incredibly fragile heavy weapon squads to be out in the open where they just get swept away. So you deploy them where they're out in the open, but they're within 6 inches of some laser blocking terrain. And then you just scout behind that terrain. You go, oh, I didn't get first turn. Well, okay, you do your scout moves, I'll do my scout moves, and these guys are going to scout defensively, just basically sideways, backwards, forwards, wherever it needs to be, out of line of sight. So it's really good because it allows you to be a bit ballsy with them, whilst at the same time protecting them and taking into account how fragile they are. And it's important to note that this is unique to the Catachan heavy weapon teams. Cadians and Kriegers don't get it. So if you start off ballsy with the Kriegers and the Cadians, start them out in the open, and the enemy gets first turn, they'll just kill them. With the Cadians, that's really bad because they've got no recourse. With the Kriegers, you could argue, well, I would get to shoot back, but think about it. If it's first turn, you wouldn't have had a chance to order them. So they'd be hitting on 4s. So it's like, oh, on a 3+, they'll get to shoot back, and then 50-50 if they even hit. So if you lose the whole squad, it's like, okay, well, I should get to fire back with 2 of them. And then you've got 2 4+ like las cannons. Statistically, you should get 1 of them, but we all know, we've all been there. You're going to roll your 2 4-ups and just miss with both because that happens all the time. The second ability is Bring It Down. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets a monster or vehicle unit, reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1. Now that might not be the most glamorous ability. It's not shoot on death, but it's reliable. It happens, guaranteed every time. It's cheap, doesn't require a CP like Overwatch for the Cadian one, and it's just a straight damage boost against the things you're probably going to want to be targeting anyway, especially if you've taken las cannons. Just think about it. In an ideal yet eminently achievable scenario, as we've mentioned a few times, you'll be hitting on 3s. So now it's 3s rerolling 1s. Also, most vehicles and monsters are toughness 10 or 11. So you're going to be wounding on 3s, rerolling 1s. It just makes these things hit hard and hit consistently. And it's important to note that the guard doesn't get access to a huge amount of rerolls. You do have things like scions, of course, and scion transports, and there are a few stratagems here and there, but it's not completely thrown all over the place like it can be for some factions. So having a unit like this with just access to rerolls is a surprisingly big deal within our faction. And all of this ties into the second reason why I think these are the best heavy weapon teams, because the abilities were just one reason. The other reason is their points cost. I said at the beginning of this video that these guys are only 50 points. So that makes them eminently disposable. You don't care if they die. Not only is that a good defensive trait, it's also a fantastic offensive trait, because it means you can get a hell of a lot of firepower for a really cheap package. Looking at this as one squad in isolation, 3 lads cannons, for example, that's decent. But look at it on a grand scale. We are the guard after all. If it's worth taking once, it's worth taking thrice. For 150 points, you can get 9 lads cannons, all hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, and wounding on 3s, rerolling 1s against their preferred target. That is a lot of firepower for not a lot of investment. And when we compare it to something like another anti-tank option, let's say a Lehman Russ Vanquisher, which is about the same points, that's getting 1 big Vanquisher shot and it's getting 1 las cannon. It's getting 100 kill himself, but that's only 1 shot, so let's not count that. It's not going to be doing that every turn, right? That's getting 2 big anti-tank shots for the same cost as you getting 9. And that's only got the reroll to wound on just the Vanquisher cannon. These guys are getting reroll 1s on hits and on wounds. Sure, we do not have the defensive nature of a tank. If someone looks at us, we're going to just be swept aside. But it's about the amount of punch out that we can do. That's what makes these things so good. They can really punch above their weight. They can do a lot of damage. They can be snapping necks and cashing checks. And then the opponent has a difficult choice. Do they go after these las cannons, which are doing an annoyingly high amount of damage to them? Or do they go after the main battle tanks? Because if they go after the main battle tanks, the las cannons are going to keep hitting them. If they sweep away all the heavy weapon teams, even if they kill all 3 squads in one turn, which is not 100%, not super likely. They might kill like 1 or 2 of the squads. But let's say they wipe all 9 teams out, all 3 squads out. So what? You lost 150 points. You lost the afterthought of your anti-tank capabilities. You lost less than 10% of your list. You've got everything else still there, still firing, still pounding, still doing work. This is why I love the Catachan heavy weapon teams over the Cadian ones and the Kriegers. Because the Cadian ones, you know, they can get las cannons too, and they can hit on 3s and they can wound on 3s with those las cannons, with take aim and heavy and all that kind of stuff. But they don't have those reroll 1s built in, and to use their ability, you have to spend like a CP. I ain't got CP to spare. I'm spending my CP on more important things. And then looking at the Krieg ones, it's like, okay, again, they can get the hitting on 3s, winning on 3s with their las cannons. But their ability doesn't kick in unless they die. And even if it does kick in, you then have to roll 3+ for it to happen. Catachans is like, we're always getting those rerolls. And as we said, we've got that scout ability, so we can be ballsy with them, and we can get hits in early on, and we could just use that, terrain permitting, to be really, really deadly from the get-go. I just think that Catachans are consistent. They hit good, they hit consistently, their ability's always on, and they've got a few tricks up their sleeve to be able to do that from the beginning of the game. And it's because of all of these factors that I think that the Catachan heavy weapon team is the best heavy weapon squad. And I think it should be the go-to for a lot of Imperial Guard players. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Out of the 3 heavy weapon squads, which is your favorite? And do you prefer your heavy weapon squads with mortars, lance cannons, autocannons, or are you some mad bastard who's going missile launch heavy bolters? Let us know your favorite loadout. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does boost this video with the YouTube algorithm, and it's a great way of supporting the channel. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.